Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Blocks, where it seems like Peter Frampton's head is blocking mine, making me look rather deformed. But that's okay, because Peter Frampton's good looking enough for the both of us. He's bald now, don't you know? Anyway, welcome to today's little show, where today I want to talk about live albums, because it was on this day that Peter Frampton's Frampton Comes Alive became the biggest and most profound and most popular live album ever. Now, live albums used to be considered something of a throwaway by the record labels, and there were some reasons for this. One, they were cheaper to make, no studio time needed. Two, they generally didn't introduce any new songs. They were a chance to recapitalize on songs that had already been available on previous albums or as previous singles. So it was a chance to sort of make money between albums. But in the 70s, this began to change. The Allman Brothers, who were known as a really great live band, released Fillmore East, and that was considered really one of the best live albums of all time. Emerson, Lake and Palmer gave new material to the audience via a live album with pictures at an exhibition. Deep Purple's Made in Japan, which was supposed to be a throwaway album only for the Japanese market, turned out to be huge. And John Lord always remarked that at the very beginning of the 70s, the term made in Japan sort of denoted something expendable, something cheap and made cheaply, where by the middle of the decade, made in Japan was actually a mark of quality. They were making some of the best stereo equipment, some of the most reliable and efficient cars, and so much as Japan had a great decade in the 70s, so too did the live album. And there were many live albums that came out throughout the 70s that were quite successful. There was Waiting for Columbus by Little Feat, arguably their most popular album. There was Wings Over America, Paul McCartney and Wings. Kiss Alive was a really big one. The Song Remains the Same by Led Zeppelin. Yes Songs by Yes. The list can go on. But the mother of all these live albums was Frampton Comes Alive. Now, let's look at the ingredients that made this album good. Well, in order to create a live album, you need to be a good live performer. And Frampton was just that. Peter Frampton is someone, even though he's a huge star, always has been, his wonderfully virtuosic guitar playing has in some ways been a secret among either guitar players or people who really like guitar oriented music, because he is a wonderful guitar player and he's also a wonderful songwriter. His sense of harmony, his sense of chordality, what he does with chord changes is so remarkably sophisticated. It's not just, strumming to the chords that are obvious. He does things that have what I call the element of surprise. Sting even talked about that. He said in the first few bars of a song, he wants to hear something unexpected. That's how he knows it's a good song. And Peter Frampton has that in just about all of his songs. He also had a very good singing voice. He was genuinely and still is a very nice person, and that really came off on stage. And he always surrounded himself with really good musicians. Now, Peter Frampton's early solo records on A&M were all really, really, really good. So I'd encourage you to listen to all of them because there were a lot of great deep cuts that didn't actually make it to Frampton Comes Alive. But Frampton Comes Alive it showcased what he thought were the signature songs of his era. And while he had success with Humble Pie, and while he had success to a moderate degree with his solo albums, he wasn't doing as good as he should. That all changed with Frampton Comes Alive. Everybody had the record. Everybody had the poster. The guys loved the guitar work and the fun lyrics. The girls loved the presentation. Everyone was happy. But there was also a downside because the album that was so big and all over the radio was something that is hard to follow up. And we're used to hearing these stories of a studio album that's not necessarily easy to follow up, but when it's a live album, that complicates things even more. Now, all of Peter Frampton's albums in the remainder of the 70s and into the 80s were really, really good. You should definitely dive into his deep catalog there. But the combination combination of this album being too big for its own good and an appearance in a much hated unofficial Sgt. Pepper's film at the end of the 70s, it hurt his career, it hurt the Bee Gees' career, didn't hurt Alice Cooper or Aerosmith's career. But be that as it may, the story goes that David Bowie gave Frampton a call and said, "Do you want to play guitar with me?" And so he played guitar with Bowie, went out on tour with him. And that made people remember, wait a second, this guy's not some teen idol. He's a monster guitar player. And from then on, his albums started to become more popular. He went back on the festival circuits and has had a very consistent career from the late 80s to the present day, playing to audiences all over the world. But it was this album that really helped to put him on the map. He was already on the map for those in the know, but this made the entire world know just how great Peter Frampton is, and that can only be a good thing. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.